Toastmaster. Fellow Toastmasters, new welcome Toastmasters. Nothing is impossible to the mind that believes. These very words were shared with me by my father growing up. It was such an awesome thing to receive positive affirmation in meaning with words, as nothing is impossible to the mind that believes. Not knowing truly where my father had received the message himself, but he applied it within his own life. He has several U.S. patents. He has had many successes. He was a Little League coach, and that in itself was wonderful beyond means. But he always said that to me, to my brother, and to my sister. Nothing is impossible to the mind that believes. How many people here have bought into excuses? Anybody at all? Come on. Okay, let me reword the question. How many people here are complete with life? They've mastered every dream ever.
There you go.
No hands? Okay, now let me ask. Have you ever bought into an excuse? Maybe it's I'm not good enough. Maybe I'm too fat, I'm too thin, I'm too bald. Maybe it's the economy, or all the jobs are in China, there's no opportunities here. Maybe it's the government, right? They're only bailing out the big guy, not the little guy. I mean, think about the number of times that you have excuses, and see if you choose those excuses to actually limit yourself from achieving the greatness that you already are. When I was in college, I took up cross-country running. I didn't do it in high school, but I knew that if I was going to compete, that I could, stride for stride, be as good as anybody else on that team. I practiced mornings. I practiced afternoons. Many of the people on our team didn't always show up to practice. I followed nutrition. Heck, I even bought a subscription to Runner's World. And I read every article in there. I was confident. And I knew that when my coach timed me, that some of my times in practice were as good as the second place man, and on the heels of the first place person. But yet, at the moment of the meet, at the starting line, just before the gun would go off, my mind would wander. I would look at the other people on my team and the other team. They started in high school. I didn't start until college. It's got some new Nikes there. Expensive. They probably got that Kevlar stuff in them. They're probably pretty fast. Just got regular sneakers. I forgot the carb load last night. Maybe I'm not even hydrated enough to run today. And that thing about lactic acid? Runner's World, I read an article where genetically some people are predispositioned to get more of it quicker. Maybe that's me. I became defeated. But when the gun would go off, I would run like crazy. I would run like a bat out of heck. And yet, the first person would pass me, and that would be okay. The second person would pass me, especially if they passed me on a hill. And then I would sit there and say, maybe next race. Maybe I can practice a little bit harder next time. And I would start to give up. I would start to accept excuses that I had created, not realizing that that's all they were excuses. You see, it doesn't matter what the situation is. It doesn't matter what the condition is, what the environment is, what the economy is. If you choose to let it be your excuse to your own personal greatness, you've already bought into that excuse to defeat yourself. But truly nothing is impossible to the mind that believes. Now there are three things that a successful mind always focuses on. Number one, they're solution-minded. Number two, they don't buy into excuses. Not theirs, and certainly they don't listen to the negative thinking of anybody else. And number three, they never give up. During the Great Depression, and really a much more seriously situation than what we have right now, there were many companies that just couldn't hold on. They didn't have TV to get this out there as fast, and the internet, like we do. They had radio. Some didn't even have that. And yet people, minute by minute, were buying into failures. It's an economy that's going down, and so am I. One company. This company is actually the oldest brewery in the United States. Anybody know who that is? Yinling. During that time, the family sat down and they said, let's look at the situation. Let's be solution-minded, not problem-focused. They went and diversified. They went into dairy farming because there was a food shortage. And milk made them a little extra money. Many people were without jobs, and they had nothing to do. They bought some dance halls. They converted one of their factories into a dance hall. They even put on skits and little plays to entertain people and to raise a little bit of money to which sustain their company to be one of the strongest and still now the oldest brewery within the United States. Solution-minded. See, the creative mind always looks to create. The creative mind is not the competitive mind. The person or persons that spend their time and energy trying to beat you will forever spend their time and energy trying to beat you, and they beat themselves at the same time. The creative mind knows that it is not a problem, it's really a challenge. And that the solution is already out there the moment the challenge has shown up. The second thing is they don't buy into excuses. Successful mind, the mind that believes, does not buy into excuses, nor do they listen or embody the negative language of those around them. They see the greater picture. Joanne Rowling, single mom, penniless, infant child. Instead of going out and looking for a job, she decided to work on her passion. Her passion was writing. Her child would cry and wake, and when her child would nap, she would take out her papers and she would continue to write. This would go on and on for a period of time. Later, she didn't have the money to get a computer to type this out. She hand-typed 2 manuscripts and sent them out. And today, she is known not only for that first book, but the entire Harry Potter series. Imagine if she chose to buy into excuses. Imagine if she chose to listen to her friends. Go out and get a job, don't spend time writing. Authors, especially first-time authors. Are you for real? Imagine if she bought into that. She accepted nobody else's excuses, not even her own. And we have been blessed, not only by her writing. And today, Forbes recognized her as a billionaire. She was penniless. So she's blessed too. So is the rest of the world for her writing. The third of the successful mind, the mind that believes. The mind that believes never gives up. No matter how difficult the situation is, no matter what is before them, no matter what plan they have that may seem to fail, the successful mind knows that it's not a failure, it's a lesson. The successful mind will never give up. In the early 1900s, there was a young Scottish family that immigrated to the United States, into a small area of New York. The mother of this family, her name was Maggie Mitchell. Maggie Mitchell. Short little stocky lady. Scottish lady. And she had a young daughter, about 1 year old. And somewhere between the age of 1 and 2 years old, that young daughter, whose name is Gladys Mitchell, got stricken with the polio virus. Now we all know that the polio virus can cripple, can deform. We also know it can kill. And imagine back and during this time, many people didn't make it. But the mother was so determined. The doctors had said, if your child makes it, your child's legs are definitely going to be deformed. Forget about her ever walking. Maggie Mitchell doesn't believe that. She had a stronger belief within her. Nothing is impossible to a mind that believes. When other children were beginning to walk, she took little Gladys out of the baby carriage, and she would make her hold the baby carriage. And she would walk with her. And later, Gladys would walk, and she would start to put bricks, heavier bricks inside the baby carriage. Later, Gladys had to work with a little bit of a brace. Years later in her life, she had a small operation because one leg was longer than the other. Gladys grew up to marry, and she had walked. Not only did she walk, she had 3 of her own children, 3 sons. And in addition to her 3 sons, she raised over a dozen other homeless children and orphans. She gave them a home. And she used those same words that her mother had inspired her with. She gave them hope. Some would stay for a couple months. Some would stay for over 16 years. Her oldest son, her natural-born son, her oldest son, would grow up and see this passion, this commitment within his own mother, and he would embody those same words. Nothing is impossible to the mind that believes. That oldest son is my father, who is John Frost, who some of you have met. So it doesn't matter. It truly does not matter what excuses you may have. You can be, at any moment, you can be solution-minded. You can focus on the solution and not the problem. You can accept no excuses from anybody else or make up your own. And you can choose to never, never, never give up. Today is a brand new day. And irregardless of what any excuses you may have had, you can start fresh. Because nothing is impossible to the mind that believes. Mr. Toastmaster.